Hello, I'm Professor Chris Roy, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the research that I do in the Kevin T. Crofton Department of Aerospace and Ocean Engineering. My research area is primarily in computational fluid dynamics, or CFD, and specifically I'm very interested in the accuracy and the reliability of CFD predictions. In my group, we do a number of different types of flows. We analyze a number of different types of flows, from subsonic flow. So example here on the left is flow over a simplified tractor trailer. Some more traditional aerodynamics flows. Here we're looking at transonic flow over a wing, and then all the way up to hypersonics. And you get very interesting things happening in hypersonic flows. In this case, shock boundary layer interactions, very high heating. You can see peak temperatures that we see here on the order of 3,800 Kelvin. Probably not incredibly accurate because of the models that we're using here, but you kind of get an idea of some of the interesting aspects of hypersonic flows. And this is a fairly hot area right now. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about two specific research projects that I have ongoing. The first one has to do with numerical accuracy, and we refer to this as the air transport equations. So when you use CFD to analyze a fluid flow problem, you have to come up with a grid to solve it on. And depending on whether that grid is maybe too coarse or maybe the mesh quality is not very good, and this can be really a big challenge when you have complex geometries. But you're going to have numerical errors associated with those CFD simulations. These aren't errors associated with modeling like turbulence and reactive flow and multi-phase flow and things like that. These are errors associated with the numerics of numerically solving the Navier-Stokes equations in your submodels. All right, so with air transport equations, what we do is we actually solve additional transport equations for those grid-related numerical errors. And just like you solve conservation of mass, momentum, and energy to figure out things like density and velocity and pressure, we can solve these additional equations to find out the grid-related numerical errors in those same field quantities. This provides us some big advantages over some, kind of current state-of-the-art methods like adjoint methods, which only tell you things like errors in your integrated quantities like lift and drag. We're going to be able to predict and estimate numerical errors in the field variables themselves. Also some important advantages over Richardson extrapolation, which I'll talk about in a second. So here's an example. We've got inviscid flow over a Kármán-Tréfs airfoil. So there's actually an exact solution to this, although we kind of have tweaked this a little bit for compressible flow. In this case, we're looking at the error in the pressure, the pressure field over the leading edge of the airfoil. And we can see here, since we have an exact solution, we know what the true error is from our CFD computation. You have large errors here near the stagnation point. They get smaller as you move away. Using our air transport equation approach, we fairly accurately predict that error at the leading edge, both its value and the way it's distributed around the leading edge of the airfoil. And we can compare it to, kind of another, I won't call it state of the art, but probably the most common practice out there today, which is called Richardson extrapolation. And with this, you basically solve your CFD problem in a sequence of successively finer and finer grids, and you kind of infer what the asymptotic behavior is. One of the drawbacks is that you need two grid levels. Typically, it's a coarser grid level that you use to come up with your error estimate on your current grid. And as you can see here, in addition to being on a coarser grid, these errors are off in both their location and their magnitudes. So clearly we've got some benefit by going to air transport equations. In addition, we solve this on exactly the same mesh that we solve our CFD problem on. We've got current funding on this from the Air Force Research Lab and from Los Alamos National Laboratory. And in fact, I'm looking for a fall 2021 GRA to work on that with the Los Alamos. But in that case, they are looking for, we need to hire a U.S. citizen GRA. All right, the other topic I want to talk about has to do with model validation. Okay, so assessment of models with experimental data. So we're involved in a joint computational experimental effort with some other folks here at Virginia Tech in our department, Dr. Lowe and Dr. Davenport. And here we're focused on how well turbulence models perform when you have separation that's caused by adverse pressure gradients. And to study this, we picked a very canonical kind of flow field, which is flow over a hump. And you can see here we've got flow going left to right. We've got the experimental picture on the left showing oil flow visualization, where you paint the surface with oil, start the flow, and then you basically look for how the oil patterns move, which tells you something about the direction of the velocity right on the surface. And then we have some surface streamlines that we pulled out from CFD here. And a very interesting feature to see here is that for this nominally symmetric flow field, okay, so our geometry is nominally symmetric, our flow in the tunnel is nominally symmetric, we get an asymmetric wake here. So you get separated flow, and there's clearly this vortex that's showing up here on the experimental oil flow viz picture. Computationally, we actually found at least qualitatively the same thing. So we have a non-symmetric wake. We've got this strong vortex that shows up here in a slightly different position here in the computations. And then you again have this kind of recirculation zone. And this plot here is colored by the negative component of x velocity, which is kind of the velocity in the flow direction. So these colors here, anything other than red is indicating reverse flow. So you can see we get a lot of reverse flow here in this wake region. We actually get a very small amount of separation down and way deep down into that oncoming turbulent boundary layer as well, which would be very hard to pick up over here experimentally, even if that did occur. All right, and this effort I should also mention is funded by NASA Langley. All right, and just the last thing I want to mention is, we work on a variety of other projects, number of proposals in the works right now, and I am looking to hire a couple of GRAs for fall 2021, and specifically, again, some of those will need to be U.S. citizens, but we also have a very robust GTA program in the department as well if you're interested in a teaching assistantship. All right, thanks.